What does happiness from within mean to you?
Well, I think it's, we are simpatico. I always talk about at Happiness Squad, it is all about, in fact, the original title of my book that I wrote was called From Fear to Freedom, A Journey from Within to Live Your Best Life. And so, the work that we're doing is so on the same lines. I fundamentally believe, happiness is a choice and it is work we need to do. We have zero shot in the world of controlling the external world, as much as we would like to believe we do, but we have 100% shot at mastering our inner worlds if we are willing to do the work. So that's what happiness from within means.
Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another beautiful episode of Happiness from Within. For those of you that are new, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am beyond ecstatic. We have a really incredible guest today. I have him here right in front of me. His name is Ashish Kothari. He's the founder and CEO of Happiness Squad, and he's also the author of a #1 Amazon book bestseller called Hardwire for Happiness. And he's going to be here to share part of his story and how we can hardwire our success. So I'm really excited to, just to get his insight on that. He has a lot of experience. So, hi, Ashish, how are you today?
Janet, thank you for having me be on your podcast. I'm doing wonderful.
Wonderful. So, what does happiness from within mean to you?
Well, I think it's, we are simpatico. I always talk about at Happiness Squad, it is all about, in fact, the original title of my book that I wrote was called From Fear to Freedom, A Journey from Within to Live Your Best Life. And so, the work that we're doing is so on the same lines. I fundamentally believe, happiness is a choice and it is work we need to do. We have zero shot in the world of controlling the external world, as much as we would like to believe we do, but we have 100% shot at mastering our inner worlds if we are willing to do the work. So that's what happiness from within means, is how do we fundamentally raise our level of consciousness? How do we fundamentally rewire our own brain structures to allow ourselves to be in that bliss state?
Wow, that's beautiful. It's really beautiful to hear different people's responses after doing so many episodes because there's no right or wrong answer. Every answer is really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It was really, really deep. That was great. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where was your upbringing from?
Yeah. So look, I grew up in India. I was born into, really into middle class. My parents, who were unbelievably, my mom's a PhD and a gold medalist in calculus. So really smart. My dad was an engineer who then became a banker, working for the central bank. Again, really well, really good, academically. I mean, just they're both amazing. And really loving parents. And, if you think about the era in which I grew up, Janet, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, India was still a closed economy.
Mm.
And there were 1,000,002 people. And India was just coming out, right? 20, 30 years after independence. So there weren't a lot of opportunities and there were a lot of mouths to feed. And so this notion of, very early on, work hard and really put everything to succeed if you want to be happy. Because literally at that time, in that moment, it was, if you don't work hard, you won't be able to put food on the table. And beyond finding happiness, right? Like if you need food and you need a space and you need to do meaningful work, that's how I grew up. That's where I grew up. So I spent close to 40 years chasing happiness outside, not from within.
Yeah.
Incredibly successful, but struggling internally. And that's when I made a pivot. I went deep into the space that we can cover in subsequent questions.
Wow,
Uh, yeah.
that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just curious because I actually lived in India for about 6 months. Are you from the northern or the southern?
From the north. So I grew up, my parents are from Jaipur in Rajasthan.
Okay.
I grew up in Delhi
Okay.
and for all of my schooling years. And then for my college, I went to Bombay, or Mumbai as it's now called. Where were you, Janet?
I have I was in Chennai. I was all in southern India, Kerala. So I didn't get a chance to go to northern, but I'm making it a goal. The next time I go to India is when I find the love of my life. We're gonna go to the Taj Mahal and go visit
Well,
places.
I can definitely help you with the itinerary, but I mean, the South is so beautiful and pristine. So I'm glad if the only place you went was the South. I'm in Kerala and Chennai. I mean, beautiful, beautiful places to be. And also, like, very spiritual, spir- deeply spiritual places. A lot of wisdom has come from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, Ashish, what are 3 steps we can take to start hardwiring ourselves for happiness?
So it all starts, number one, I always say is awareness, right? I think awareness starts from recognizing the hand that we are dealt. It's a beautiful hand, but like everything else, there is no good and bad or bad, right? They're both together. So the good is our brains have evolved over millions of years to be unbelievable prediction machines, right? We spot danger, we can predict, and they prepare our bodies to take action, right? Through adrenaline and cortisol, fight, flight, freeze responses that we know about. That's the good news. It kept us as a species alive and took us to the top of the food chain, even though we were not the strongest or the largest. The downside of that is the world we have created for ourselves looks nothing like the millions of years over which we evolved. There are no tigers and lions out there who are going to get us. We are not constantly in a struggle for food, where we might starve to death. But what we do have is we've created a world where there is so much happening, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and our brain has no way of differentiating a psychological threat from a physical threat.
Hmm.
So step number one is recognizing that our brains are wired to keep us safe, not happy,
Mm,
right? And so if we have to make a shift, we've got to start from there to say, hey, recognize you have a negativity bias. There's nothing wrong about you. That's just who we are. It served us, but today it doesn't. Step number two, then, Janet, if I had to say, is in my book, I outlined these 9 practices that are in every wisdom tradition. They've been around for thousands of years. We've known about them. They're things like meditation, gratitude, purpose, compassion. They're also proven from psychology and neurosciences that they genuinely can make a positive difference for us and they can rewire our brains, genuinely rewire our brains. Like, for example, with meditation, our amygdala shrinks, our prefrontal cortex grows, we are higher able to regulate emotions. So, the second step that I would say is these not living and practicing these 9. Knowing is not enough. We have so much knowledge, we are parsed for practice.
mm,
And so that's number 2 is practice. 5 minutes or less. We designed a whole rewire program to help people do that. It's 5 minutes or less what you do daily. And then the third step is don't do it alone.
mm.
Sanghas, communities of practice have been a core part of our human existence. When we do this work with others, with a joint purpose around this, we provide a vessel for accountability, inspiration, and support that can help us change the odds of us staying in fear and discomfort just because it is current state and it's convenient into getting the support to evolve into something more.
Oh, that's great. It's so interesting. I'd like to add to what you said, if you don't mind.
Please.
You were talking about not doing it alone. I'm part of a world peace organization that promotes happiness and well-being. And my mentor, Daisaku Keita, I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he dedicated his whole life basically having dialogues with people and promoting happiness. And it's all based on value creation society, right? And the whole concept of it is just like you don't find happiness just by yourself. You do it by also helping other people. And so I just thought that was is very aligned, right? Like with what you were saying, because it's like, in today's society, it's just like our the 21st century has changed so much technology, people on their phones, and it's like, but in the end, like whatever's going to happen, we're humans. We got to be having that interaction, with other people, right?
Absolutely. And in service, look, this notion of service and doing, in Buddhism, it shows up as good work, right? Work that is good for you, that makes a difference. Service shows up consistently everywhere. And when we give, we receive so much more, right? And all the work in positive psychology is proving that, we experiments around, I can give 100 people $500 and tell group A, go spend it on yourself. We tell group B, do help, spend it on others. And
Mhm.
we can evaluate, how happy are you and how long does it last? And time again, every time when that study's been run, group B is happier and they stay happier for longer. So
Yeah.
we know it. The way to be happy is to make others happy.
Yeah. That's so true. Just to add to what you just said, one of my favorite authors, Robin Sharma, he's a humanitarian. He's written a lot of books, and I was recently listening to one of his podcasts, and basically he was just talking about how he's worked with people of all different backgrounds, from IBM, very, very wealthy people, right? And it's not about the money of how much someone makes, but he gave the example of he's helped like a lot of billionaires, right? And he said a lot of not a lot of them, but he said some of them, he'd go to their house, right? And he was mentoring them, and the client would say, Robin, like I have everything. I got the jets, I got the cars. Um, but I'm not happy anymore. And he asks, why is that? Right. And they said, well, because I was building my business and I forgot to pay attention to my family and my kids. Right. So the message of why I'm sharing that and what he's trying to say is just that, like, he just came out with a book, The 8 Different Forms of Wealth. I'm not trying to go on a tangent, but the message is just simply that with yours, it's just like in the end, like our family and all these things are so important. It's really trying to, I'm not saying it's easy for anyone. It's not, but really trying to have a little bit of that balance, like it's hard because it's like when you are building a business, you do give up a lot of things, right? But just remembering that like your family, like don't lose sight of that is really what he was saying. So,
Yeah, no, and
or
it's
whatever your
beautiful.
family, your friends, whatever that is, your immediate
Exactly.
environment.
Yeah, and I think at the heart of it, Janet, for me is I think not running on autopilot, right? There are so many who, when you really catch them, find themselves every day, every week, we're in their own version of Groundhog Day, right? Just living those patterns, starting in the morning, ending the day exhausted. Maybe we'll grab a glass of wine or something, or watch Netflix and then exhaust and start it all over again. And the weekends are filled with running kids around to games or doing your shopping, or maybe I have some, cook something. But we're just running on autopilot. And before we realize it, days have turned to weeks have gone to months become years, and life is over, right? And so one of the things that we talk a lot about, I invite your listeners to do this, is at least once a quarter, if not at least once every 6 months, find a half day to yourself and step back and say, hey, how's life going? And I invite you to do this simple exercise around four key dials, right? Which is, the first dial is, let's call it work or wealth. 0 to 100, you define what's your number. I won't judge if it's a billion, 100 million, 10 million, 100,000, whatever it is. If you want to define it in assets, you want to define it in income, whatever it is, it doesn't, just choose a number and say, how am I doing? The second is, how am I doing on health?
Mm.
How am I feeling, physically, mentally, spiritually? Just take a step back and say, how am I doing? Third is love. How am I doing about relationships? My friends, my family, my community, how am I doing? And then the fourth is meaning. Is what I am doing meaningful for me, right? Is it filled with meaning? However you define meaning. And at the every quarter, when you do this assessment, then look at where you're spending your time, right? And I say we all have 24/7, 168 hours in a week. Even if you do every quarter, you decide to reallocate one ball, 1 hour from one area to the area that you're not feeling enough in or you're feeling depleted. every quarter you'll make a positive impact. And all of a sudden, right, step by step, move by move, I think we will live a life that at the end, if the day comes, whenever it comes, that we actually we don't have the classic regrets of the dying, right? Around working too hard or not keeping touch with friends or allowing ourselves to be happy. It's about really breaking out of these conditioned habits and lives that we live.
Wow. That's really beautiful. Wow. My next question for you is I'd love for you to talk about a little bit about building a human centric culture, strategies for fostering
Yes.
positive work environment. I would really love to hear about that. Share
So
with the
let's
audience.
absolutely, right? So I spent 25 years in consulting. I was, as you know, Janet, at McKinsey and Company, where I was a partner, leading our leadership and well-being work for the last 5 years. If you look at the research that's coming out, the most recent one, I was actually talking 2 days ago to the partner at Boston Consulting Group that did this massive study around mental health in Canada. So she was studying Canada. I had a similar conversation with some McKinsey ex-colleagues of mine in the US. Let's step back for a minute and I'll talk about how important this is across their works. In Canada, what she found is 40% of young adults are struggling with mental health. Okay. One of the biggest stressors that creates that for them is work.
Mm.
So we can talk about happiness and well-being. Unless we fundamentally change our workplaces, it's not going to change.
Mhm.
I'll give you a second piece of research that was done at McKinsey. It came out in November 2023. When you look at burnout, they studied burnout across 30 countries and they studied well-being around 30 countries.
Mm.
When we look at burnout, about 16% of folks in the US are burnt out. Okay. Globally, on average, the number is 23%. Now, obviously, that comes at a heavy personal cost, but it comes at a huge cost in terms of even output for the company. 16% burnout in the US. Can you guess what percentage of the burnout is driven by individual practices? We talk about meditation and all of these are individual practices. How many of these do you think can actually prevent burnout?
Out of the 16%?
Let's say, out of 100, what contributors are individual practices or drivers to burnout prevention?
I'm not sure. I'll guess 25%, but it might be too high.
Yeah, it's 3%.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
97% of why people burn out is related to the job, the team, or the organization. When it comes to well-being, 27% is driven by individual practices.
Hmm.
73% of well-being is driven by how demands and enablers at the job, team, and organization level.
Oh.
And that's the disconnect, Janet, that we are trying to bridge in the work that we are doing. Almost 90 to 95% of well-being interventions or therapy interventions are all individual based,
Mm.
right? Like that's the disconnect. We are not going to solve the crisis that we find ourselves. One of my friends says this beautifully. We're not going to yoga our way out of this crisis, right? And hence we have to change work. And oh, by the way, the invitation for all of your listeners who lead teams or businesses or functions or communities for that matter, not for profits, whoever they are, recognize this. The research on flourishing is so clear. Companies that flourish 2 to 3.5% higher stock market returns versus peers. Over 10 years, that's 30 to 50% higher.
Mm.
So there is a financial incentive for companies to really embrace this and address this, right? You don't have to do it just because you care for your people. You should do it because you care for your people. But even if that's not the primary driver,
Mhm.
do it because you want to drive higher value. But we've got to fix it. We've got to change work. We've got to create what I call human centric, which puts humans at the heart of the company because all the impact we drive out there is driven by our people. So let's not do it at their cost, but let's do it by harnessing that magic that we as creative beings can build and bring for positive impact in the world.
Wow. 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 That's really, really deep. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, we have to do it. We have to change the way we work. These systems that are making us sick.
So what is the future of work, you think?
What is the future of work? You know, we are on a mission to change the future of the work because right now I feel the future of work is pretty bleak. Because going back to, I love your mission. We share that mission too, around 1 billion people. I'm curious around why you chose 1 billion. I'll tell you why I did. Because it comes from this belief that, we are operating as humanity. We are getting more and more hardwired for fear, and we are constantly seeing the world from a place of that.
Mm,
And that's where all the people if you think about the future of work, that's kind of where our systems are operating. We are constantly trying to meet the quarterly targets. We're becoming increasingly short-term focused. We are, now thinking around AI. And again, it's like, oh, great, let's think about this as a way. And this can, we say, well, this should help us collaborate better, but it's going to result in a huge displacement of jobs, which is fine. It's not a problem. It's not a problem if, as companies, then we also make the investments to retrain the people, right?
mhm,
I think we are swimming in this world where everybody is kind of now living with discomfort around not knowing the right answer around remote versus in-person hybrid work. It should have made things better, but I think it's made more inefficiencies into our work. We still need to deliver, so it's resulting in people doing more work. So what we are trying to change, what I think the future can hold for us, Janet, of work, is the following, and that's the North Star that we hold, and I invite you all to have that. It doesn't matter if you lead a company, a function, a team of 4 or 8. You do it for profit, or you do it for not for profit, it doesn't matter. So imagine if everybody on your teams showed up finding personal meaning in what they're doing every day. By the way, in an activity that they spend majority of their waking hours. The only thing we do more than that is sleep, right? So imagine if everybody shows up finding personal meaning in what they're doing, number one. Number two, imagine as a leader, you are creating an environment which is net energy creating. So people are excited to show up to work on Monday, not dreading Mondays. The highest number of heart attacks are on Mondays because people hate their work, right? So imagine if everybody shows up really personally excited, they leave the day with more energy versus exhausted to spend time with your loved ones. 3, imagine if the way you ran teams, people felt safe. They trusted each other and they felt safe to show up as their full selves with all their emotions, with all their thoughts. They were open to generating ideas, not worrying about how they're going to be judged. And fourth, imagine if we created the way we work, where we gave people an autonomy to work, make work fit their life. We gave them space where they could be at their best versus back-to-back meetings, which generate stress and result in our lack of focus. Imagine a world like that. That is what the future of work I hold front and center, where collectively we can do 2 to 3x more. We can achieve so much higher results without completely putting everything we got into work. Because work was always meant to be a part of our life, not our life.
mhm. Wow. That's incredible. You've been sharing such incredible insight. I'm very touched by your words. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you,
really, really
Janet.
incredible what you're doing. How long have you been doing this, helping companies to
Yeah.
find happiness?
So I was doing this work for about 5 years when I was at the firm. I used to do very different work and then I shifted into that because I wanted to bring, and then year and a half as Happiness Squad, right? So for your listeners who want to find us, they can go to our website and learn more about us. For year and a half as Happiness Squad, and it's just been amazing. I mean, we're working with whole systems. We just kicked off an effort 2 days ago with a whole intact 120% function. We're working at all levels of the organization. We're working on individual practices using the science of habit formation to change, going back, happiness from within, shift our brains from fear to freedom. And we are working with the leaders to fundamentally drive interventions organizationally. Let's free up space. Let's reduce job overlaps. Let's learn to have constructive conflicts. Let's find conversations that we can infuse more meaning into what people are doing every day. Let's check in once a month on how we are doing as a team. How are we feeling? Not how we are doing against our goals, but how we are doing against each other. What do we need from each other? That's what we are putting into place right now over the next 8 to 9 months, where this becomes integrated into how this company and this team works.
Oh, is there a way that you can take that and put it into like the schools, like colleges?
Yeah, that we are doing that as well. So I teach. I was partnering up with a professor at CU. I live in Boulder, so I'm very closely involved with the Leeds Business School. So we're building that curriculum, the rewire work, and taking it to schools. We're also doing this work, Janet, with educators. So I did some work with the dean at Detroit Mercy. We're about to start something else at another school. I mean, we need this work.
Hmm.
Our frontline workers, our educators, our doctors in
Hmm.
colleges, we need this work so we don't have to solve the illness. We don't have enough resources to fight mental illness,
Right.
but we can proactively help our younger generation build habits that allow them to thrive rather than burn out.
Hmm. Yeah, because I don't live too far over here from UCLA. I interact with a lot of the students there, and that's why I was asking, because
Oh, they're
I'm sure
struggling.
you know about what was happening over here. I don't want to talk about it, but
No,
the
yes.
encampments and stuff. But yeah, it was pretty the last 24 hours, a lot of that had to be cleared out. But yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. It's just, voices wanting to be heard, people going through things mentally, it's tough times right now, but
It is
but
it is tough times. And literally, I can say this that the US is true. We are drowning under the weight of our own prosperity. We are the number one GDP country in the world. We are number 23 in happiness. We are number 63 when it comes to adult happiness.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I just wanted to get back to your question. You were asking about a billion. So it's actually over a billion because I don't want to limit myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just simply to, I think there's what, 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, something like that. It's just to have a big goal and make an impact, right? Leave a legacy, right?
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I'm very curious, Janet, of what are some ways in which you are moving towards that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Um, well, the first is definitely the podcast, Happiness from Within, right? Um, Also just having dialogues, with women.
Mm.
Um, I want to start doing just having like small groups, right? Help having dialogue with women because a lot of times people just want to be heard. It's not about giving them a solution sometimes. Sometimes people just want to be heard, right?
Yes.
I did a program, it's called Beautiful Soul Emerging. It's basically helping women to take whatever trauma or difficulties they've had with their health and basically just transform it, right? And there was 7 women that went through this. It was during the pandemic, right? And I had, anyways, they really changed. Every single one of them changed their life, and I was just like, I kind of was testing it to be honest with you. I was like, my higher source was saying you have to do this, and anyway, just to condense the story, basically earlier, this past few weeks, I kept seeing butterflies everywhere. Everywhere I was going outside, I kept getting signs from the universe. I was like, okay, I will relaunch the program. And so I'm relaunching that again. So just taking small steps, and I think the most important thing too is just continuing to keep my vibration high, right? And because it's so easy for any of us, right? Like to get sucked into negativity. And of course we all have our off days, right? But I just continue to try to really just be the best version of myself, and of course not there's never any day that's perfect. There's some days that I have to just isolate myself and recharge my batteries.
Absolutely,
But yeah, thank you for
absolutely.
asking.
Well, I think I love the name of your program. You know, it's first of all, you said emerging souls. I love the soul, right? Say that again. The name, it's beautiful.
Beautiful soul emerging.
Beautiful soul emerging. I love that name because I think it touches on something so beautiful, which is, we are whole. We are born whole, our souls. And, even when we go through traumas of the most extreme kind, right? I'm talking, we go through sexual abuse or we go
Hmm.
through like being, in today, which is so common in the US. We go through somebody who's committed suicide, or we go through like, being in a violent place, right? Or find ourselves in these protests that are happening and we don't want to be there. Trauma affects our minds. Trauma affects our bodies. Trauma doesn't touch our soul. I love this work because in the work that you're doing, right, at the heart of it, we are connecting back to that higher source. We're connecting back to our higher self and kind of saying, hey, let's not shut off, because when we shut off, we're also shutting off light. We're trying to keep the hurt out, but we're also shutting off light. We're shutting off love. But if we do, right, let's lower those armors so we can let the beautiful light of our soul shine. Let's actually use these events or whatever's happened to expand our ability to love and to serve rather than go into our cocoon is so beautiful. So I just wanted to share that back with you. Thank you for doing what you're doing
Oh wow, that's
in the
so I
work.
just literally got goosebumps when you were talking about the cocoon. Because like, may I add one more thing? Because I know we're almost at time.
Yeah, please.
No, just about the whole cocoon. Because I'm gonna condense the story in 30 seconds. But I had gotten really sick during the pandemic, and I it was just really it was really crazy. A lot of chronic illness symptoms were coming up, and
Mm,
I had a rare condition in my body for like 20 years. It was really difficult to walk for several of those years, to bend my knee more specifically. But it was actually in 2018, after I had many surgeries, the doctors told me I'd never walk again. And I said, watch me, and but then after, literally going through all of that, right? The seasons of life that we all go through. We all go through the seasons of winter, but winter always turns into spring, right? But just, I feel that that's why like this mission, right? Because it's like everybody has gone through something. It's not about comparing, but we all have gone through something. And I want people to know that they have that light inside of them. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when we're going through the buzzing of the bees, right? Above us, but just to give people hope, right? Because that's really what it's about, right? So I
yeah.
have one more, go ahead. I have one
Janet,
more
can I?
question for you, but go ahead.
No, please. I wanted to like just on this. There is this. Have you read? Have you read The Prophet by
I
Khalil
haven't.
Gibran?
Robin Sharma keeps talking about that book. I need to get it.
So, just on this notion of suffering and joy, if you would allow me,
Yes,
I
please.
would love to read a little passage,
Yes,
which is
yes,
one
yes,
of
yes.
my favorite from that.
Yes, yes, yes.
And this is a passage on joy and sorrow.
Mm,
And so, it said, then a woman said, speak to us of joy and sorrow. And he answered, your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is it not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? Is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you're joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight.
Wow. That is so beautiful. That's actually part of the quote that Robin Sharma shared too. So I really needed to hear that, and I think the audience too. So thank you so much. So my last question for you is, how do you want to be remembered when you take your last breath?
Ah, how do I want to be remembered? You know, I want to be just remembered as somebody who was loving, who was kind, and who helped so many others shine their light to start to bring healing um, into the world and help others shine their light even more. That's really what I would like to be remembered for.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell us where people can find you. Your details are going to be below, but for those listening,
Yeah, so you can find us on Happiness Squad. You can learn more about our programs, which are on Rewire, the book Hardwired for Happiness. We also post regularly on LinkedIn. You can go under my profile or on Instagram, my Happiness Squad. And we have our Happiness Squad podcast. So if you enjoyed this conversation, please have a listen to that too. We have lots of our effort, Janet, in the podcast for our listeners. We bring in a lot of experts around organizational flourishing because, as I mentioned, if we don't change work, we're not going to we're literally almost saying you're in a toxic relationship, figure out a way to like smile your way through the suffering. Like we've got to change work. So I'm trying to bring in experts who can really help leaders do that. So folks can come listen in on your podcast and giving me this opportunity to share a bit about what we're doing. I'm grateful to you.
yeah, absolutely. I really want to also say thank you from my heart to yours. It was an honor to have you here. And I just wish you a wonderful, fabulous day. And remember to smile because you're worthy.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and have a great day.